Welcome to All Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. It's me, it's Toast. How are you all doing today? I am back from Warhammer World, and this is the final road to gold with my Untamed beasts. And let's get this out of the way first. If you saw off my musings, rather wonderful picture with his rather dashing medal, I did not get gold. In fact, my chances of getting gold were reduced to nil almost immediately. As per usual, Warhammer World hosts fantastic events, and this one is no exception, and I'm going to talk about it now, and it's going to be a good time. So first things first, I guess I might as well go over what list I brought and how I performed in those games in typical Road to Gold style. And yeah, I brought a Heart Eater with +1 damage, a First Fang, a Prey Taker with +4 wounds, a Vexmore with +1 attack, True Blood with +1 move, and 3 Planesrunners. And that is a lot of blessings to have in one list, but I didn't have a 4th Planesrunner. And actually, I really enjoyed playing a list with so many blessings because it really gave the list a lot more kill potential and more options in actual gameplay. Because of it, for example, having +1 move on a True Blood is fantastic. Making your Heart Eater into an absolute murder glass cannon with a 5/5/3/5 profile is a lot of fun. Glass cannon status be damned. Now, if you've been watching Road to Gold, you will notice that this is a list I tested for about a week earlier on in the series, and it won exactly 0 games. And you might be wondering, why did I take the list that lost every single game? And the reason for that is because I thought that this list had the most potential, even though I didn't play all that well. I went back to that video, watched it through again to see what my takeaway of this list actually was. And the biggest takeaway was I played the list badly, but I saw potential. And that was enough for me. In my heart of hearts, I thought this was the best list I'd made. That True Blood Vexmore combo is just really strong. You've got that smashy control, you've got that mobility netty control, and you've got that pulley control with the First Fang. There's a lot of good stuff in this list that is consistently threatening, and a lot of it actually is part of the actual Untamed beast. There's a lot of Untamed beasts here, and whilst it's very easy to go, oh, well, he's got Vexmore, it's like, you know, Vexmore's carrying it. It really didn't, and a lot of my games really highlight that. Speaking of which, let's get into those games, and the first game was against Jamie and his Skaven, and this was a fairly standard Skaven list that you see nowadays. There was 2 Rat Ogres, one had that Warp Fire Thrower, there was a Skabic, and just a whole bunch of like Packmasters, and I think like one relatively cheap sort of like Bladebone Skaven just to fill in the points. And the list was naturally strong. The list also did very well because Jamie came 4th overall. So the list was good, and this was a great start to the tournament. Not for me necessarily because I lost. Spoiler, I lost this game. But because it was so close. And like I always like to do, I like to look at why I lost the game. And it's very, very easy to go, it was the dice. Dice fucked you over. And kind of, you could say that at the end, I would have potentially won had my Planeswalker did 1 damage. Maybe. But then you look deeper than that, right? You don't just look at the dice, oh, well, that's the easier way out. Had I played better over the course of the game, I wouldn't have been forced into this position where I needed a Planeswalker to land 1 damage to get a kill and then get that last couple of points to score the win. So ultimately, I think I played fairly well, but there was some little mistakes here and there that I didn't account for. The biggest, I think, play I made in that game was just sending the True Blood in and netting his Rat Ogre right off the bat. That Rat Ogre didn't move the entire game. He was netted for like 2 turns and then Vexmore and killed. So he did absolutely nothing, which is fantastic for me. But the issue was I didn't support the True Blood enough. So True Bloods are very fragile. Toughness 4 and 20 wounds might seem like they're decently durable enough. It really isn't, because this True Blood died to 2 Packmasters on turn 2. He got killed by a rampaging Packmaster, and that was it. He was dead, and the Rat Ogre was free, which meant I had to then dedicate more powerful resources to deal with that, and in this case it was Vexmore. And Vexmore was actually intending to run down to smash his other Rat Ogre with the Warp Fire gun, and then that would have, you know, basically shut down all of his damage, right? Vexmore killing one ogre, the Trueblood locking down the other, and then I take everything else, and it's a fairly easy win. But sending in that Trueblood alone, again, I had this exact same issue against Rob and his Iron Jaws, or Cruel Boys, I think, and was that the Trueblood just got killed by chaff. And not very good chaff, like fairly crappy chaff, just rolled a couple of sixes and he died, right? And it's a little bit sad. That's a lesson that is definitely worth learning, and I learned it here firsthand. And again, my opponent played fantastically. His Warpfire gun was a real threat. That 12-inch range, being able to fire up to 3 times is really powerful when you have 8 wound chaff. But yeah, the game was super close. I think it was 1 or 2 points between them in the end, and it could have went either way. And it really did cement my belief in this list, despite the loss, that this list can really do a lot of stuff. I am just not using it well enough to get success. And I think I really highlight this in the next 3 games because I win the next 3 games, and I'll go into those now. So game 2 was another kill mission. I believe it was Brutal Encounter, if my brain is currently working, and it was against Leon and his Nurgle demons. And this list is like my kind of Nurgle demons list that I really sort of like to theorycraft, and that is just a bunch of beasts of Nurgle. This guy had 3 beasts of Nurgle, beautiful classic old models from back in the day as well, super visually appealing to look at, a bunch of plague bearers and a couple of characters scattered here and there, and a base of Nurglings, right? A fairly standard but fairly powerful Nurgle demons list. And this game went really well very quickly, and this came down to just having the damage. Now, my opponent had a bunch of toughness 5 stuff. He put on a bunch of toughness blessings, which made his stuff a little bit harder to kill. However, I have like strength 10s and strength 5s in fair amounts, so I was able to do a fair amount of damage when needed. And this basically resulted in that on turn 2, I killed 1 beast of Nurgle, turn 3, I killed another, and on turn 4, I ran away. That was it. I got the kills I needed and I fled. Bravely ran away. It's not the most glamorous way to win, but you know, when you have your first Fang landing some pretty meaty crits and Vexmo comes in, just lands massive hits, and your Heart Eater runs into a Beast of Nurgle and solos it because of his 3-5 damage profile, it's a good time. And at that point, why risk losing more points? You might as well fall back, because what's the biggest weakness of Nurgle? They're slow. I have an overwhelming model advantage at this point. I think I killed a few plague bearers too. So I had a massive model advantage. I had the point advantage. Might as well just, you know, take that win and fall back. And that's what I did. Super simple strategy that paid off with a pretty dominant win. Going into game 3, the objective missions started coming in. We got basically reverse ley lines, like objectives vanished over the course of the game. And I was against Kharadron overloads. And this was the kind of list that really spooked me in testing, because I don't really have the speed to catch and murderize ranged units, especially when they're as dangerous as Kharadron overloads. However, this game went really smoothly, despite losing my first Fang to a hit and a crit from a fight for profited up ether cannon. After that sort of like big blow, the game very much went in my favour thanks to just being faster. I scored an early lead. He positioned his Aether Cannons to threaten the centre, and this was a blunder, and I capitalised on this mercilessly. And, you know, my reinforcements came in directly behind those Aether Cannons, and they got mulched by a Prey Taker and a Trueblood, and that was the end of those. He had his balloon guys jump in, but they got mulched by a Heart Eater. And because of the duality of this mission, where the person who's losing can remove objectives, the issue with doing that, it's like a double-edged sword, is that once you start removing objectives, you can't easily score that secondary. So the secondary was basically if you got a kill on something next to an objective. Well, if you're removing the objectives, the things that were fighting for objectives and taking damage are no longer on objectives, because you don't want me to score objective points in addition. So then my guys weren't conceding kill points, and I was then just moving in and getting my own kill points off of him on those remaining objectives. And that was basically the theme of this mission, was just me running around and killing all this stuff. In the end, we both lost a fairly hefty chunk of models, but because of where I killed things and when. And in the end, I had a fairly substantial lead in points, like 10-4 when all was said and done. And going into game 4, I was up against my buddy Ed, or Maps, from the Discord, and he was running his signature Dark Oath Savages, and this was the best game I had the entire event, and all my games were fantastic, I loved them all, but this one was an absolute joy. It was so swingy and backwards and forwards. There was a lot of sneaky tricks and traps going on, so much crazy things. And, you know, one turn I was winning, the next turn he was winning. It was just flipping and flopping. And in the end, it came down to the last turn. And we both deployed some cunning ruses and managed to navigate through this really complex web of tricks and traps to get that one up on each other. And in the end, I did get the win, but it was disgustingly close. And had literally anything went different, like one rule went differently, the game would have flipped aggressively to the other side. It was such a fun game, and it started aggressively. Right? We both came into this game just with crazy amounts of aggression, right? Vexmore just barreled forward, aggressively postured in the center, and Maps got a quad and just launched a Slaughterborn straight into Vexmore. And when all was said and done, after the rampage and him getting initiative, Vexmore was left on like 2 wounds, and then just landed a meaty like 25-30 damage in a single hit and just laughed it off and walked away. And it was just this wonderfully brutal game. A lot of things died, and it was so much fun. Ed's always a fantastic player. We played in our 4th game a couple of events ago when I was playing Vulcan Flameseekers against his Splintered Fang. Always a fantastic opponent, and I absolutely love this game. Before I get into all of that though, please be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below, as well as potentially join my Patreon, like all these wonderful people on screen now, badoosh, as all of this helps me fight against that dastardly YouTube algorithmic demon, and by extension helps support the channel. You can also help support the channel by going to Element Games, badoosh, using my affiliate link. But with all of that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
And now for something completely different.
And in the end, I really enjoyed playing this list. It had a lot to it. Yes, it was a little bit blessing heavy. Yes, it was a little bit vulnerable to long range shooting. But at the same time, there's a lot of damaging threats here that did work. Everything in this list did something important and vital. It wasn't just chaff and allies. It was like, it felt like I was playing Untamed Beasts with some key allies to fill in some gaps, as opposed to the other way around where you're playing key allies and you've got a bunch of chaff, right? Like, the Planesrunners had a purpose. They ran around, they killed other chaff, they held objectives and quotas, they're fast, they're mobile, they're durable. A key winning point in the final game was, in fact, Conan, the Proven with Greatblade, ran in and was going to murderize one of my Planesrunners and basically win the game off of that kill. But Planesrunners are deceptively durable, and Brute Resilience kept them alive quite comfortably. And that is what it is. The Planesrunners, despite only being toughness 3 and 8 wounds, are really effective at surviving assaults from mid-range things. And this happened time and time and time again because of the power of their reaction. But that Prey Taker, plus 4 wounds on a Prey Taker, like 115 points, 442 for toughness 4, and 14 wounds. It's not a bad profile. And in conjunction with Savage Fury to get the +1 move and +1 attack on the same turn, this guy did work. He just cleaved through chaff. He cleaved through a lot of things. He was such an effective damage dealer, and because of that +4 wounds, he survived. A 10 wound Prey Taker is abysmal. They're way too squishy. At 14, they do just enough that I think they are worth it with that Sawtooth Blade. And that +4 wounds, like with the Planesrunner, was actually pivotal to my victory against Maps, against Ed, because I took 10 wounds over the course of the game on that Prey Taker, and he survived. He would have been long dead otherwise, and that helped me keep my wounds advantage up, because we were playing Lightning Raid, and the things that die are a long-term negative to your long-term success. So the Prey Taker was fantastic. The first Fang died a lot, and I didn't use the pull that much. I used it a lot less than I thought I would in this event, but at the same time, that ranged damage was pivotal in so many situations. Chipping off the last wounds on big things, killing chaff, just being a bit of a nightmare. And unlike many ranged units, the First Fang is also very good in melee because he's got a strength 5, 3 attack profile with okay damage output. So he's an all-round solid guy, and I found myself using his pull less, but using Savage Fury a lot. Savage Fury, it's often overlooked, but Savage Fury works on ranged attacks. So you can move your 5, throw your harpoon, and get an extra attack on that harpoon throw. And that helps, right? Going to a 3-5, 2-5 profile at like a 13-inch range is a good time. You start punching through things very reliably with that. And a thing I learned in testing was that the First Fang really has to move. You can't keep him being greedy. You can't just stay back and chill. He has to be a mobile threat. You have to get him up the board. And whilst he was intended to support Vexmore, he did a lot of the time. But what ended up happening was they would split up. So Vexmore would barrel towards one objective, for example, and then the First Fang would stay within a supporting range of Vexmore whilst going to a different objective and supporting other things over there. It was very much like a mobile support piece that helped in multiple locations thanks to that range and his ability to like move twice and still lob that harpoon and yank things into wherever I needed them to be. So he was a really good piece as well. The Hearty Ab being 5-5-3-5 was hilarious. He was dying every game almost, but his damage output was through the roof. He killed so much, and it resulted in him like running in, getting the kills, burning a double to move and kill something else, and he just blended through things until he was eventually killed. He was one of the biggest threats in every single game. He was absolutely nightmarish to deal with, more so than even Vexmore, which might sound crazy, but Vexmore Vexmore was good. Vexmore was very good because he attracted a lot of attention. He controlled a lot of space, and he quite literally never missed in this event. He was landing hits like crazy, and we calculated like a rough approximate amount of damage he did in this event. Vexmore did well over 200 damage. 200 damage in this event. Which averages out at like, 50-ish damage per game. Although in the first game, it was way higher. It spiked way higher. Vexmore did almost 80 damage in the first game. 80. And you might think that's broken or overpowered or, game-breakingly good. But when you consider that Vexmore killed Packmasters, largely, 50 damage of that, like 80 damage, was on 2 Packmasters. He hit 25 and then 25 on 8 wound models, and that's not that helpful, right? He had to do it. He had to kill these things to get to more important things. But because Vexmore doesn't have access to things like move or attack on kill, it meant that you really can just bog him down. And it took him a whole turn to cut through these 2 Packmasters, and then he moved in and then one-tapped a Rat Ogre, which was also quite entertaining. But it took him 2 turns to get to that Rat Ogre, and I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses, is that he is so static, right? He doesn't have the ability to really choose what he fights necessarily. Your opponent chooses for you, and if that's Packmasters or random-ass chaff, you're not making the most of your damage, and I found this happened in most of my games. Vexmore did get some really key kills, but it was largely just locked down to killing some chaff, and that's okay. Like, gaining activation advantage, killing chaff is always good, but ultimately, he is so slow that you are basically forced to kill what is handed to you, whereas something more expensive, like say a Form Red Crusher, a very powerful piece, is fast enough to go where he needs to go and kill what he wants to kill. And your opponent can't really do much about that. So Vexmo was really good. He was definitely an integral piece to the list, but he wasn't as dominant or as impactful as I think his outlandish damage would suggest. And I think the rest of the list really pulled weight. The Trueblood landed a bunch of really powerful nets, which is a big thing. And because, funnily enough, Splintered Fang aren't seen that much and Truebloods aren't that common of allies, people are often taken aback by how powerful they are as a support piece. That guaranteed net is disgustingly powerful. On a movement 5 body with that blessing as well, he's got a 13-inch net range. He just runs up, lobs that net, and you're done. You can just say anything you want is just locked down for the rest of the game, potentially, if your Trueblood doesn't die. And it's such a strong piece. That Trueblood netting a Rat Ogre for 2 turns, considering the Rat Ogre is so much more expensive than that Trueblood, and locking him down for 2 whole turns. He didn't move out of his deployment for 2 turns, and then he died in deployment on turn 3, right? So that Trueblood was incredible. Even though he died rather unceremoniously, his ability to just lock down key pieces is undeniably strong. And I think against most lists that pack that like single big Titan thing, the Trueblood wins games almost, right? The only real counter to a Trueblood is to kill the Trueblood before he does something, or to have multiple Titans that you can't deal with. And when most people still only take the one, the Trueblood dominates. He's such a powerful, powerful piece. And I'm really happy with how she performed. In the later games in the tournament, there wasn't really that much of a need to net things, so I wasn't netting all that much. But the movement 5 and the decent durability meant she could just run around the board and take objectives and be annoying and cut through chaff. And she was always useful, even if she wasn't always using that net. And I'll stop rambling now, but I thoroughly enjoyed this list. I think everything in it worked wonderfully, and I think there was definitely potential here to go 4-0, or at least get a loss later in the event. But going 3-1 is still fantastic, and I tend to go into these events when I bring a lower tier warband like Untamed Beasts. I tend to go in looking for a 2-2, right? The series is called Road to Gold, but I wasn't necessarily expecting to get gold. I was hoping to get a decent performance, and I got a pretty darn good performance in the end. 3-1's fantastic. I came 7th overall, and the event was great. I got to meet a whole bunch of new people, a whole bunch of people I've met before, and it was just a really good time, and I can't wait to go back again in March. And what am I going to bring? I have no idea. I am very tempted to bring this list again and to do my second season of Road to Gold using Untamed Beasts again, because it was so much fun. And interestingly enough, I don't want to attribute the popularity of Untamed Beasts to like myself, because that's a bit too big-headed even for me. However, there was a lot of Untamed Beast players there. There was like 4 or 5, with myself included, and that's crazy because Untamed Beasts aren't that popular, right? There was like 5 players there, and it was really cool to see a faction that I've been thoroughly enjoying have so much representation and placing fairly well. I came 7th, another player came 9th, someone else came sort of middle of the pack, and someone landed near the bottom. So the Untamed Beasts have potential. They do some pretty funky stuff, and they performed pretty well overall. And some of these lists as well are really interesting. A lot of them were simply just... it wasn't a 1-box, but it was just in all-in faction Untamed Beasts with some really interesting unit combinations that really piqued my interest. One of my favorites was the guy who came in 9th, a guy called David. I believe his list had a whole bunch of toughness 5 things, right? He packed in +1 toughness on a bunch of guys, and he had like 2 First Fangs, he had a Rock Tusk, he had a Beast Speaker, and it looked surprisingly durable and just really nasty. And because it was all in faction, he gained access to his battle trait. And the Untamed Beast battle trait is really good. So it was interesting to see. I'm glad it did so well. Coming in 9th is fantastic in a 36-man tournament, right? It's coming in the top 10. with, again, a 3-in-1, right? It's just a really good time. Another really surprising thing with this event, though, was Skaven, right? So Skaven, not so much surprising, but there wasn't that many players. There's only, I believe, 2 Skaven players in the whole event, and they both landed top 10, and one of them came second, and that was Andy, and Andy is always a top performing player. He's absolutely fantastic. Brought his Skaven in, and came second, right? He did a pretty darn fantastic job there. But the other interesting thing was that there was a lot of Stormcast. And when I say a lot of Stormcast, I don't just mean a variety of Stormcast. No. It was like nearly all of the Stormcast players were playing Ruination Chamber. And that's really exciting. Ruination Chamber is one of my favorite ways to play Stormcast. They are so much fun. They're so oppressive in a way that is just nasty. And they were everywhere. One came third, one came fifth. Just all down the leaderboard. There's Ruination everywhere. And the lists are varied and wonderful and powerful. They did very, very well. And from what I heard from people playing against them, they were nasty. People just don't expect to have their abilities shut down. And it really plays into the mind games of, if you use that ability, I might use my reaction, but I don't have to. But if you don't use it, then I've used my ability for free, right? Which is such a mindfuck to deal with, but I absolutely love it. I think I want to finally touch on another one. Of course, Aitan, of my musings, came first with Tarantulas Brood. Love to see it, right? He went to Southampton, got a first with Brood there as well. Came at Warhammer World, got gold with Brood again here. And he's really highlighted just how powerful swarms can be. Me and Off Meta have went over this list a few times, and it's such a powerful list, right? It's so good into Ferocious Gnarlwood and into this current meta, right? This meta is really Titan, smashy, killy centric. Brood don't give a shit. Universally don't care. Taking like 12 spiders, 2 nets, and a leader is such a powerful mix of units that just, it's hard to deal with, and people typically don't know how to deal with it. And having such a high profile success with Brood might see more people bring in swarms and hordes. And that's good. That's a good thing, because the meta has been stuck for like 6 months, if not like maybe a year, in 6 or 7 man warbands that are hyper killy, and they really can't deal with swarms. Swarms are their natural counter, and people aren't bringing that natural counter. They typically just complain that things are too killy, right? And the counter's here, right? It's a swarm warband, and there's plenty of swarms you can take. So hopefully we'll see a bit of a shift in the meta, and that'll lead to more shifts, right? Because there are counters to swarms, and they will become more prevalent, and things will start to mix up again, which is always a lot of fun. So starting to wrap up this sort of like rambly video, I'm going to throw up a bunch of pictures taken by Demetrius of the people who entered their warbands into the painting competition. There are some absolutely stunning warbands in there, so I'm going to hire them up in a little second, and you can gawk at the wonderful paint scheme. But before that, I want to have a big shout out to Demetrius, or Fighterlax from the Discord or Instagram, right? I had a really bad foot, basically. I had a pretty serious infection in my foot and ankle, and I was unable to build or paint my warband because my eyes were not working and my hands were incredibly shaky. So I wasn't actually able to do that, and he came forward and said, dude, send your stuff over, right? Send them up to Scotland. I'll build them, I'll paint them, it'll be awesome. So I sent them up, he built them, painted, based them, and they were beautiful. They are absolutely gorgeous, and I'm going to put them up now as well. It was a Slanesh themed Untamed Beast list, and it was just beautiful. And as always, Demetrius is an absolute legend, and he once again proved that he is far too good for Old Toast. And dude, again, massive thank you. The models are fantastic and love them to bits. So that's the end of Road to Gold, but also not really, because I didn't get gold. So therefore, Road to Gold must continue, and we're going to do a season 2. So there's a Warhammer World event coming up in March, the end of March, that I am going to, and I will either run the Untamed Beasts again in an attempt to get gold to Untamed Beasts, or I will give in to my urge to play a rather gimmicky death list and try and win with that. I haven't decided which yet, but Road to Gold Season 2, it's on its way, and it's going to be a good time as I grind through some more Untamed Beasts or some Soulblight Gravelords or whatever it is I choose to do, and it's going to be a really fun time, and I'm really excited to do more of this. These videos get a lot of really positive engagement, and I get to talk with the community more and go over ideas and just, like, you know, natter and stuff. It's just a good time. I like rambling. It's what I do all the time with my wife, and she's happy that I ramble to other people a bit more now. So it's a good time. I'm looking forward to doing more of this. And, you know, hopefully you're excited for more Road to Gold too. Eventually I will get gold, or maybe I'll just die of old age. We'll get there one day, but until then, lads, ladies, and everybody in between and beyond, ta-ra.
Groovy.
Hey all, and welcome to the post-toast credits. A massive shout out to my algorithmic demon slayers, Andy Morris, blah blah blah, the Head Knight of Paint, Heinz D, Long Run Hobbies, Lord Phylax, Maps, Sable Saber, Steph, Steve Bean, the Houston Toad, Tough Tootin' Baby, and Velas. A huge thank you for supporting the channel, and I will catch you all next time. Ta-ra!